There are more millionaires than ever leaving the United States, enacting their own Plan A and going and living in other more free and tax-friendly countries. But the millionaires who aren't leaving also want a Plan B. And today I'm going to tell you what that is and how you can build one for yourself. And there's an article in Fortune magazine which says rich Americans prefer Harris over Trump, but they want a second passport no matter who wins. Now you might say, hey, a lot of wealthy people would like Donald Trump to win. That just shows to me how divided the United States is. You have certain wealthy people like the Mark Cubans of the world who want Harris to win, who think she's the answer. Obviously, she wants to raise your taxes. She wants unrealized capital gains tax. Who knows how far it goes? Elizabeth Warren talked about a wealth tax. But one thing we do see here at Nomad Capitalist is our clients have become more and more diverse over the years. Not everybody cares as much about lowering their taxes. Hey, if they're moving overseas, they might as well get some tax savings. But we have fewer clients looking to pay zero tax. They will push back if they think Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or anyone is wasting their tax dollars. But they're increasingly feeling like the U.S. and other legacy brand Western countries are holding them back. They're choking them. They're holding back their freedom. And I think that's why you're seeing more Americans, according to Fortune magazine and many others, want a second passport. Now, the article talks about how affluent Americans are more likely to support Kamala Harris. Again, that seems perhaps a regional thing. But they are looking for a backup plan to escape the political environment in the U.S. through what the media calls golden passport and citizenship by investment programs. Now, why would an American want a second passport? Why would someone who's wealthy in a country, people say, oh, it's the best country to be a millionaire. Ironically, it's only people in that country who say it's the best country to be a millionaire. But you would want a second passport because no matter who wins, increasing tensions, trade war, tariffs, whatever you want to call it, with China and probably with more countries to come. What does that mean for your business, especially if you do business internationally, as I do? It means that having a U.S. passport could be a sort of scarlet letter. We've seen that with the cryptocurrency community. We've had investors as our clients over the years. I can't open a certain account. I can't invest in a certain project as an American. There are folks who can't invest in certain mutual funds or make certain foreign investments as an American. So you already have had, we've talked about this for years, more and more reasons why if you're a wealthy entrepreneur or wealthy investor, you have been at a disadvantage, you will be at a disadvantage. Forget the fact that things like FATCA made it more difficult, although not impossible, to open a foreign bank account. There's plenty of banks now that don't want Americans. And I think what more wealthy people are seeing is, wow, the country is kind of starting to fall apart. One thing that I have been told by folks is, I never thought I'd call Nomad Capitalist 5 years ago. I never thought I'd go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply and ask to become a client because, hey, I thought 5 years ago, yeah, I pay too much in taxes, but things overall are good here. What we hear, anecdotally, but everyone I talk to says the same thing. Articles like those, like this one in Fortune, say the same thing. Wealthy folks are saying the cracks are starting to show. And so when they went and did a survey of people who had between 1 and 5 million and 5 million plus, Americans said no matter who they vote for, they have deep anxieties about the country's economic outlook. More than 50% said theoretically they could leave the United States after November's election. Now, obviously, you can ask people, you can put that question any way you want. Most people aren't leaving, kind of like, hey, if so-and-so wins, I'm moving to Canada. Most people don't move to Canada. But the article says they're seeking to secure passports in countries like Canada. Not so sure about that one so much. Australia, I think that one's jumped the shark too. New Zealand wasn't always the most friendly towards Americans. These are the ones they want you to think you want. The UK, okay, this is totally out. Ireland, there are some folks interested in Ireland. It's close enough. Time zone's close enough. You can get citizenship there after 5 years. Language is the same. All right, there's some people who want that. Spain, that is a popular one. And Portugal. No more tax deal there. Still the golden visa, but that jumped the shark. I think what you're seeing here is a magazine like Fortune goes out and talks to wealthy people and says, hey, would you leave the country? Oh, yeah, we're scared about the direction the country is going. Where would you go? And It's like I told a story at Nomad Capitalist Live about when I was 16 years old. I was in love with the Petronas Towers in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, where our event is and where I now have a home all these years later. But I always felt, even though I couldn't stop talking in speech class about how beautiful the Petronas Towers were, I always felt like that was a bridge too far. And so when I was 15 or 16 and I decided I wanted to move overseas, I thought I'm going to move to London because that just seemed like a reasonable place, for a white guy from Ohio to go. I'll go to London. Okay. Never really thought about, can I get in there? I mean, the UK doesn't really have. We had Nigel Farage talking this year. I asked him, why don't you guys have a policy for entrepreneurs and investors like the kind our clients had? They got rid of the investor visa right before the Russia-Ukraine war broke out. They don't have anything for wealthy people to move there. Canada's been squirrely, Australia and New Zealand have been squirrely about those. I think people think these are the kinds of places they're supposed to go. And that the reality is, what our clients, once they get educated, are saying is, let me have 1 foot in the West and 1 foot in the East. So if I'm coming from the United States and I'm worried about what's happening and I'm seeing the cracks emerge, I want to be able to pivot to a Western country that's more responsive, has more love for its citizens, has fewer beefs with other countries around the world that are going to blow back on me. They're going to make my passport look, like a scarlet letter. I want one in the West. And then I want one in the East. We've had more folks interested in Turkey citizenship by investment than we have in the past. So do people ask about Australia and New Zealand? Sure. And then they get told about how long it takes and how much money you have to put in and how difficult it can be. And they say, okay, tell me what else I can do. One thing that we've had tremendous success with in the last year is Malta citizenship, which now it seems is going to be a program that sticks around. It's going to cost you about $1 million with fees to get citizenship in a country that isn't big enough to have a beef with anybody. They're not big enough to go around telling people what to do or even, bossing their own citizens around. They have to be responsive to their own citizens in Malta. It's a small place. And so you can go and you can spend about $1 million with fees. You and your family can get citizenship. It'll take you about 18 months, which is a lot faster than moving there. You don't have to move there other than you've got to be there for a little bit of time during the process, but not a long time. And yeah, $1 million is a lot of money. But if you're someone who's in that $5 million plus category or $10 million or $20 million plus category, that's a one-time fee to get a passport as good as your American one. Plus, you can live anywhere you want in Europe. Plus, your kids can, and they can go to school. Plus, your grandkids can, and their kids, and their kids, and their kids. You're buying a legacy for your family. And you can do that in the Caribbean through citizenship by investment at a fraction of the cost. Obviously, you get fewer benefits, but it's still good to have a backup plan. Either way, I don't see Malta or St. Lucia, which is one of the citizenships I hold, or Dominica. I don't see those on the list. Why? Because wealthy people, they think the way I did when I was 15 years old. I'll go to the UK. The UK doesn't want you, and they just canceled their non-dom tax program. Ireland can work, Spain can work, Portugal can work, although the taxes aren't going to work out well. To me, if you're going to move and you're wealthy, you might as well save taxes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with paying some taxes if you're open-minded to that. You don't have to go to a zero-tax jurisdiction. But if you're paying 45% plus, if you're going to go through the hassle of moving, get paid for it. Get a couple of $100,000 in your pocket every year. And as they say, every extra couple of $100,000 goes a long way. So what I see from this is people feel like the country's changed. They feel the economy's going in the right direction. I think people are seeing and feeling what I've been talking about for years. The countries where I live, the Malaysias, for example, they're doing pretty well. They're going in the right direction. People there are optimistic. And as some of the folks in the Trump administration said, a middle class is emerging in Asia, has emerged in Asia, and is emerging in other parts of the world. And what they didn't say exactly, but they meant, I think, is, and that hurt our ability to be competitive because we don't want to be competitive in legacy brand countries like the US. We just think, hey, if we can't run the show, we're going to take our ball and go home. Look at what's happening in the UK. They made all the tax policies that have been around for centuries that made it friendly for foreigners to come in. They're getting rid of it all. And now that everyone realizes the jig is up, they're like, well, we're not just going to let people leave. We're going to impose new taxes when you leave. So rather than trying to be competitive, the UK is like, we're going to not be competitive, and then to make sure you don't escape our uncompetitive grasp, we're going to be even more uncompetitive. And I think that whether you can put your finger on that exactly, whether you watch Nomad Capitalist, and you've heard me say that for all those years, or whether you're just kind of coming to the feeling that my dad and I talked about as far back in the 90s, one day these Western countries are going to be so broke They're going to have to be so nasty, and people are going to want to leave, but they're not going to know exactly where to go. Yes, the article says few people take the drastic step of moving abroad if their candidate doesn't win, but here's the paradigm shift. Whether your candidate wins or not doesn't matter. Let's say you're a Kamala Harris supporter and Trump gets in. He's going to do his thing for 4 more years, and then we're going to revert to the mean. The momentum remains the same. If you have $5 million or more, you are increasingly out of vogue. You are not the person. You are the reviled person that every time that someone doesn't have as much money as they used to, every time someone can't take a holiday, every time someone, can't buy that third car they used to buy, or whatever happens, that the easy days back when most countries like Malaysia weren't competitive, whenever the easy times aren't there anymore, you'll be the one they point to. And it doesn't matter if Trump's in power or Harris is in power. I think people ought to realize that. And that's why I think you want to have a second passport no matter what happens. So, English speaking, sure, that can be important. They speak pretty good English in Serbia, at least in Belgrade. They speak English all over Malaysia. There's other countries where there's plenty of pockets of English. Heck, for years, people have been going to Vilcabamba, Ecuador. It's one of the #1 places in South America for speaking English. It's a little pocket, but you live in a pocket. You live in a pocket now. And so you can recreate that. And so I think wealthy people are looking at is they're saying, here's the places I know, and I should move there. But let's be honest, is Canada better than the US? Their taxes are just as high. Sure, you can move to Canada. If you spend every day of 3 years there, you can get citizenship. And sure, if I had to choose Canadian versus US citizenship, I'll take Canadian. If I would have been born across a lake, I would be Canadian. And maybe we wouldn't be here. So that, sure, Canada does not, at least yet, tax its citizens no matter where they live, regulate its citizens no matter where they live. It's a bit easier to be Canadian, but they're still heading in the wrong direction. Australia, they wouldn't let you into your own country during the pandemic. That's kind of like rule #1 of running a country is your citizens get to come and go. Certainly you shouldn't turn them away, but they did. New Zealand, okay. The UK, never seen more headlines for a country going the wrong direction than the UK. And it saddens me because I wanted to, 25 years ago, move to London. But we can't live in nostalgia. We can't live in romance. We can't live in fantasy. What I would do is focus on having the Western passport, or at least Western leaning. I think getting some kind of passport quickly is important so you have the option to move. If you get that European passport, whether it's through Malta's $1 million program, or whether it's through you have citizenship in your ancestry and you get citizenship by descent, we help people do that. If you have Irish or Slovak or Lithuanian, or most European countries have a program, some Latin American countries have a program. If you can get that passport, that's good too. But if you have a European Union passport, you can pretty much live in about 30 different countries. And you can travel anywhere in the world. And so no matter what happens, forget Kamala Harris or Trump, if one day the U.S. goes in the wrong direction, you've got an option that's just as good, and that's Western leaning. And it's good for your entire family. And then you look at the Eastern leaning one. You can get Turkish citizenship faster than Malta just by buying an apartment or buying a home. It's a $400,000 investment. It's become more popular among clients. Egypt, that's a much lesser passport at $300,000, probably not as good of a deal. There's other, kind of Eastern leaning programs. There's also residence programs in places like Asia. Latin America, part of Latin America is becoming a bit more aligned with the East. There are Eastern European countries you can get residence or citizenship in. I think that's what a wealthy person should understand and get out of this Canada-Australia paradigm, because to get citizenship, you're either going to pay for it, i.e. $1 million to Malta, $200 and some thousand to a Caribbean country, on and on down the list. You're going to invest your way into it, like Turkey, so you're still paying for it, but that's money you can get out later. You're going to go and live there, which we're seeing, most of the wealthy Americans who are concerned, they want a plan B. They don't want to necessarily move. And the place that you might want to move might not be a place that gives citizenship. If you move to Dubai, unless you are a billionaire investor, they're not going to give you citizenship. So why would you live in a place you don't want to live in to get citizenship when you could pay and get citizenship? You want to separate where you live and where you have citizenship. That's what we preach here at Nomad Capitalist. If you're an American and you have $1 million, should you spend $250 on citizenship? That is a stretch. Again, if you have citizenship by descent, yes, you should pay. And yes, we're going to be a little bit more expensive than some companies. I think we're going to handle a bit more of the paperwork and the schlepping for you. So if you're a millionaire, we have that service. But look at West versus East. Look at getting at least one passport now, whether it's 6, 12, 18 months from now. And then look at one you can kind of get more slowly. One West, one East. and we will evaluate your entire, situation. If you're entitled to the one in the West through ancestry, then let's look at something else in the East a different way. Obviously, COVID-19, according to the article, supercharged this trend. Those looking for money look for better ease of movement. Yes, during the pandemic, Americans' passport was as good as that of Rwanda. Now the presidential election is setting off a wave of interest in relocating. Here's how I look at it. There's a spectrum. Plan B is over here. Plan A is over here. I went all in when I left the U.S. on Plan A. I don't want to live here. The question then was, how do I handle my taxes? Oh, I can save a lot of money. I can pay very little taxes. Okay, that's pretty interesting because I think I'm paying too much in taxes. But I decided I wanted to live somewhere else for the adventure, for the socialization, for the opportunity, just for all the reasons. Saved the taxes. Didn't choose to live in one place to get a passport. Traveled to all different places and learned a lot and built up my business as a result. And over here's Plan B. I just want a passport, but I'm not going to leave. You don't have to move to a new country to get a passport by investment, whether it's the Caribbean, Turkey, Malta. Maybe you've got to go there for a couple weeks, but you don't have to move there. And so I think that if you start out on the Plan B side of the spectrum and you can gradually move your way forward, go and get a second passport and then see how you feel. You will feel more free. Maybe you will go and check it out. You'll see what it's like to travel as a European or as a Caribbean citizen. You'll see what it's like to go and live even just for a couple days in a tax-free country. St. Kitts and Nevis, for example, zero income tax. You can get that passport by making a donation. You'll start to think about your options. So that's the spectrum. And there's no wrong or right place to be, but that's the spectrum you want to evaluate. But you want to evaluate it free from going to places that are exactly like the place you're trying to leave. Don't think that Harris and Trump, such micro issues, are the actual problem. The actual problem is legacy brain countries don't want to be competitive. They're broke through years of drunken spending. They don't want to solve the problem. They want to blame the wealthy for the problem. You're feeling the pinch. You're becoming the villain. Like, why go to a place doing the exact same thing? Let's not look down our nose and say, well, I'm wealthy and I'm from the United States. Like, okay, you could be wealthy and be from Malta or Vanuatu or Timbuktu. It doesn't matter. Wealthy is wealthy. We have the Live Like a King series on the channel. I live in places all around the world. You can live very well with champagne and caviar and beautiful people, whatever you want. Fine dining, fine clothing, shopping. You can find that a lot of places. Why not find a place that doesn't tether you to its geopolitical woes and make your passport a scarlet letter? Why don't you find a place that would let you have greater freedom of movement during the pandemic? Why don't you find a place that doesn't tax the hell out of you and want to tax you even more? That is what this is about. For the longest time, people in Asia and the Middle East wanted second passports because they realized their passport wasn't that good for travel. We see people now. We talked to Seyfuddin Amos, who spoke at our event, Nomad Capitalist Live. We get together for 4 days every year with all the Nomad Capitalists come to our event. Seyfuddin Amos, who is the author of a book about Bitcoin, he talked about how he could have gotten Canadian citizenship, yet he only stayed there longer and paid some more taxes. He said, I'd rather be Jordanian than Canadian because they don't bother me. They don't restrict me. They don't hold me back. And I certainly wouldn't stay in a country where it's cold longer and pay more to get a passport that will come with more restrictions. A little bit now and more in the future. And so we've seen people from where he's from historically say, I need a passport. But now it's starting to shift. I've been telling you from day one you need a second passport as a Westerner. People were laughing at the beginning. They're not laughing now. And people are coming saying, I never thought I'd call you. But it's getting crazy. But you can't think the way I did at 15. Think the way I do now after 15 years of living this lifestyle. If you want our help, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply or come to Nomad Capitalist Live. But this whole thing of recreating a life based on who wins a presidential campaign, no, don't do that. Focus on momentum and focus on going places where the momentum is going in the right direction. Don't recreate a life in a place that's going in the exact same direction.